I am in Melbourne in Australia. The city is famous for being one of the most livable cities in the world and is considered the cultural capital of Australia. It is also often referred to as the sporting capital of the world. We'll show you some of the best things to do while visiting the city. Take a look at what's coming up next.
The city of Melbourne is as scenic as it is diverse. From the fabled sports stadiums to its historic market. Melbourne doesn't shy away from dishing up a spectacular visitor experience. On the show today, we take a tour of the fabled Melbourne Cricket Ground and try out some delectable food. But first up, some advice from the expert.
What would you say are the must-do activities in Melbourne?
Well, certainly if you're an Indian tourist, you've got to visit the MCG. We know it's just an iconic part of the Australian landscape. In India in particular, one of the recognisable symbols for Australia. So take an MCG tour, see where Virat Kohli staged that miraculous innings only a few months ago. So I'd recommend an MCG to anyone coming from India. And then Queen Victoria markets. We've kept alive the fresh food and produce markets, and now there are artisan products from around the state, around the country that you can get in one place. And then that night, take in a show. There'll be there's always a theatre show on, musical theatre, whatever you want to see. Make the most of that.
Well, I'm going to be off on my way and start exploring and picking up the boxes on the bucket list. Now I have one.
Yeah, MCG, Queen Victoria Market. Don't forget them.
All right. Super.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
The tram-free zone was introduced in downtown Melbourne in 2015. It covers the entire central business district, which is the financial and business hub, down to Docklands and the market area where I'm heading now.
This is kind of Australia's bridge. See, it's good.
Queen Victoria Market is a historical landmark and an institution for Melburnians. This market is spread over 7 hectares and is the largest open-air market in the southern hemisphere. Nearly 1,000 traders sell all kinds of things here, from fresh produce to classic souvenirs and clothes. The market draws in millions of tourists annually. This market was officially opened in 1878. Its history is as colorful as it is controversial. The grounds have previously been home to a cemetery, a livestock market, and a wholesale fruit and vegetable market. It is also known as Queen Vic, named after the reigning monarch at the time. The market has undergone many expansions and renovations over its 140-plus year history. It's played an essential role in Melbourne's social, cultural, and economic life.
You're a part of the Queen Victoria Market official tour.
We meet Mercellez, the guide who will show us around.
It's a 2-hour tour. We try to do 2 hours. Sometimes we go a bit over time, but sometimes there's just so much to see. So it's a tasting tour, so you get to taste small bits of the best that we've got here.
This is John, a vegetable trader at the market.
My father started down in H-Shed in the same spot where we've been since 1946. He was 19. That's my dad, that's my mum in the middle.
John's stall is full of heirloom carrots and other interesting varieties of tomatoes and capsicum.
This is the best tomato today. There you go. I'd share them, go and have some lunch.
Next up on our tour is the meat hall, which has changed a lot over the years. It was remodeled in 1975. The stalls were increased in size to allow space for cool rooms, and an overhead rail system for receiving and moving meat was installed. While another area mainly offers seafood. We get to try oysters for the first time.
Beautiful. Look at the size of that.
That's awesome. I'm very surprised by the entire thing.
The texture.
One can easily find all kinds of delicacies from the sea that have never been frozen, like rock lobster, live mussels, and mud crabs. The Epicurean is known for its charcuterie, cheese, and antipasto. It's a good place for a snack. Fiona, who owns the large corner stall with her husband, treats us to a platter.
Here we've got a pork salami, and that's got a truffle oil going through it. So as it warms on the palate, the flavour of the truffle will come through. And then we've got two dips. This is the beetroot dip, and this is a Moroccan dip that has harissa through it.
Time to dig in.
Cured ham or something,
Yes.
right?
The opportunity to buy the Epicurean became available, and we just closed our eyes and jumped. We dived in October and then went into our first Christmas straight away.
Mark Scott is a turophile, or cheese connoisseur, who owns Ripe Cheese with his business partner and cheesemonger Hakim.
We decided to set up the first and only all-Australian cheese shop in the world. There is nowhere else in the world that just sells Australian cheese.
The first cheese Mark treats us to is the Grand Fleury Double Cream. This organic milk cheese with a French name has been made west of Melbourne by a third-generation French cheesemaker. It's very soft and creamy. The second cheese is from an organic farm in southern Victoria. The hard vintage cheese is rich in flavor and contains the native pepperberry.
How has the response been towards like what you're trying to do with your business to promote like consume?
Only getting more and more.
Yeah.
So it's really only been about 10 years or so that artisan, small production Australian cheese has been made.
Moving on, we find a chocolate shop and a bakery, and it seems like we are only scratching the surface of what the Queen Victoria Market has to offer. I would not be surprised to hear of people spending a large part of a day walking around here to sample different delicacies. I also find a funky caravan selling blue mussels.
I use the coconut oil because it's better for you.
I pack away bowls of mussels cooked in blue mold cheese for a late lunch before my final stop for the day.
To get an overview of the city, I'm going to head over to the South Bank district of Melbourne and head up in the Eureka Tower. The nearly 300-meter tall skyscraper has a viewing platform on one of the top floors. So I'm going to go and check out the Melbourne Skydeck.
The South Bank area is in the heart of Melbourne, right opposite the Yarra River from the city centre. The lively and bustling area is one of this city's most visually spectacular areas. The central Yarra River offers boat rides, and the side of the river is home to many bars and eateries, popular with visitors and residents alike. One of the most popular activities in this precinct is the Melbourne Skydeck. The elevator to the 88th floor, where the Skydeck is located, is high speed, and many people are here to see the day turn into night, overlooking Melbourne. The observation deck has many binoculars and installed devices that inform you of what landmarks can be seen in every direction from the Skydeck. There are many more activities to try here too. The VR zipline that takes the guest from the top of this tower down to the ground level amazes visitors with its realism. At the same time, the highlight here is the Edge experience, where you roll out on a moving platform outside of the building's facade in a glass cage. This is supposed to be the highest viewing platform in the Southern Hemisphere, and it is certainly the most idyllic way to soak up a spectacular bird's-eye view of Melbourne. And here's a quick tip. Head up to the top of this skyscraper at the end of a day when the night lights come on. For me, it's the perfect end to a perfect day. Seeing the sun rising reminds me of the big day ahead. I'm off to Brighton for a morning excursion to see the peculiar bathing boxes on its beach. This suburb is located 11 kilometers southeast of Melbourne's city core. These privately owned sand shacks are not open to the public and rarely have electricity or running water. They can't be rented out or lived in, but they are still very much sought after by local residents.
There are 96 of these small structures here on Brighton Beach. And these boxes were built out of modesty to have a place to change when going to the beach. Of course, now things are very different.
The tradition of bathing boxes dates back to the 1860s. An era when beachwear was a lot more conservative. These structures would provide privacy, a place to change into a swimsuit, while maintaining dignity. Bathing boxes are usually tightly held by their owners and don't come up for sale on the open market very often. However, once available, they do fetch a pretty penny, with some bathing boxes recently selling for several $100,000.
The Melbourne Cricket Ground, also known as the G, is one of Australia's most iconic and historic sports stadiums. It has a capacity of over 100,000 people, and it is also a National Heritage listed building and the proud home of Melbourne's sporting culture. And today we're going inside for a tour.
The massive Melbourne Cricket Ground is considered Australia's largest sports stadium. And it hosted one of the most memorable matches in recent memory when India beat Pakistan in the T20 World Cup.
Kohli goes down the ground, he'll only get a single. Is Karthik going to come running back? They need Virat Kohli in strike.
The biggest name in the sport, Virat Kohli, single-handedly saved the game for India, down to the last ball in front of a packed house. The G also regularly hosts Australian rules football and soccer qualifiers. Besides sports, the stadium is also used often for big music concerts for both national and international artists. The iconic stadium is open every day of the year, and a large number of volunteer guides show visitors around on organized tours of the facilities. This makes a visit to the G an amazing experience, even if no game is played on the day of your visit.
About 95,000 seats, about 5,000 standing room capacity.
We are taking a tour with the experienced volunteer guide John Gilham, who has fond memories of events in the MCG.
A little personal story.
150.
Two sons, and both loved their cricket.
Yeah.
But they also love their footy. They had to choose, chose football, and one ended up playing a grand final here in front of 100,000 people.
Wow. Proud moment.
And they won.
Yeah. Wow.
Very happy day.
Yeah.
we proceed out into the open air of the stadium and are met by another group of children.
It's school holidays, so it's great to see the kids.
Yeah.
We've hosted big events here at the MCG. Olympic Games in 1956, Commonwealth Games in 2006. For cricket, 4 World Cup finals. So the most recent, of course, was the men's T20, England and Pakistan. The one before then, about 3 years ago, was India women and Australian women. So that was March 3 years ago. A massive event, 85,000 here, and there was a concert after the event. So it was a big, very big event. Now, in terms of capacity, 100,024 people. So it's the 11th largest stadium in the world. We're the second largest cricket stadium, of course, to your beautiful stadium. The first test was 1877.
Wow.
Here at the MCG.
It's close to 150 years.
So the boundary's about 1.5 metres inside the chain.
We are now heading to the underground level where the changing rooms are. This board displays some of the most impressive achievements that the MCG has witnessed over the years. John also takes us to the press briefing room, where the winning team first gets an opportunity to speak with the media, after which the losing team gets their slot. A good stop for a photo. When we enter the cricket library, we find a real treasure for Indian fans, a fact sheet for the most memorable game in recent history. The India-Pakistan game from October 2022.
Look at the one. Look at this.
Getting to take our picture near the Bradman Tendulkar portrait was definitely a highlight of the tour. This picture is also known as the Mona Lisa of the MCG. Built atop an Aboriginal camping ground, the MCG is steeped in history. It was established in 1853, less than 2 decades after Melbourne was founded. Legendary cricketer Don Bradman broke many records at the MCG in the early 1900s. Often scoring centuries, Bradman's test batting average was 99.94, and his performance is considered one of the greatest achievements by any sportsperson in any sport. This stadium is also home to the Australian Sports Museum. After we part ways with our volunteer guide, James Tranter takes us around for a quick tour of this modern museum.
We have an interactive section where you can play games, you can test your football skills and stuff like that, cricket skills.
The new technology that has been implemented here is quite interesting. You're given sweatbands with an RFID chip inside that you can use interactively throughout the museum. The Australian Sports Museum is a great place to take your children, as there are many different installations of different sports to enjoy. From Australian rules football to basketball and of course cricket, to name a few.
Absolute must-see if you're coming to Melbourne. Do plan for, I would say, 2 to 3 hours even, if you're a die-hard cricket fan. Known for its many restaurants, cafes and eateries, Melbourne offers many cuisines and exciting fusions. I'm going for a foodie's tour to dig into some of the savory and sweet delicacies in the city.
The food tour begins at the Melbourne Immigration Museum, because to understand a city's food scene, one has to figure out all the cultural influences. Melbourne had many unofficial names in its first years, but Janet begins by telling me that it was never called Batmania.
So there's a myth that Melbourne could have been called Batmania, but what it was at the time, because he was so enthusiastic about the
location of the city
and all that and everything. There was a cartoon in the newspaper of the time which said that mania. So that's where that came from. So, yeah. But it is one of the myths that we could have been called Batmania, but unfortunately it is a myth.
There was a lot of immigration to Australia for the gold rush. The phase started in 1851 and lasted until around 1914. This brought people from the world over to Australia, looking to make it big by finding gold.
Then once you got to after the Second World War, and you had all Greeks and Italians coming out after then.
Besides Chinese, Greek and Italians, Vietnamese immigrants also came to this area during the Vietnam War. The Grand Ballroom and the Customs House would have often been used for social gatherings. It is a truly majestic room even today. Walking around this museum is fascinating and can give you new insights into this dynamic city and how it has grown. But we are here for the food tour, and it's time to move on. We first pass the historical Mitre Tavern, which has been here since 1837. Moving on, it's time for the first meal, and we visit Little Brother on Little Collins Street. On the menu are steamed bao buns with pork belly, a Vietnamese specialty. Really crispy. Next, we're going to an Italian eatery called Caffè e Torta inside an arcade.
This is Royal Arcade, which is the oldest arcade in Australia.
This old-style cafe has been here since 1869, and today it is so popular that it's hard to get a table inside this small eatery. We order 2 small bites from their menu and finish them quickly. After the cafe, we walk through the narrow lanes around the arcades and come upon the Block Arcade.
This one is a block arcade, so it was around the 1890s. An arcade is really like a mall, but it's more you tend to associate it with the older style ones, which you'll see as you go into this one, how they've retained, some of their more old architecture.
This arcade is situated between Collins Street and Little Collins Street and spans an entire city block, hence its name. From the exquisite entrance to the grand tall ceilings inside, this is a remarkable building with intricate design. The glass ceiling that covers the length of the arcade offers daylight to enter inside in a beautiful way. We find an exciting spice shop with a large inventory of exclusive spices.
They get spices for about over 135 single origin sauces all around the world of these spices, cheese, salts and things like that. And then each week they make up about 100 different mixes of all those different types of spices.
A tea room in this arcade is so famous that a queue has formed outside of it. Next up is Brunetti's, which has become an institution in Melbourne. Renowned for its cakes and sweets, this massive eatery has a pizza oven, a bar, a vast coffee island in the middle of their establishment, and rows of fresh pastries and sweets. It's getting close to dinner time now, so we go to an upmarket restaurant in Melbourne called Farmer's Daughters. We're served dish after dish, all of it in small portions to ensure we have room for everything. The combination of flavors and textures is exquisite. Next up is the main course, rabbit, something quite unique. Dessert after dinner is a story as old as time. By the time we finish, we are so full we can hardly move. Time to hit the hay.